kina semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
Hear me out there. All right. Welcome to a breaking news edition of Talking in Stations. I am Matterall. This is Carneros.
Good morning.
We're here to talk about the just recently published final statement on Brisk Rubal's follow-up investigation. And I guess the headline is that his ban has been reversed. So we'll go into what that means, and we'll go into some of the history so that you can get caught up if you don't know what that's about, which I doubt. But Carneros, what are they saying here in this blog?
In this particular one, they're saying they've completed their investigation. They have identified some incorrect assumptions they made at the beginning of the process, which I will remind you was April 8th. It was Monday, April 8th when they made their original statement. And after going back and reviewing it, they determined that some of their assumptions were incorrect in that. They're now moving to apologize to those involved, which were not just Brisk Rubal. They are, and I'll add, manually going into the system to reverse any forfeitures or seizures they did. They're restoring access to accounts and such, and they're undoing some of that work.
So they're giving back the stuff they took away, huh?
Yeah. There's nothing in there to say whether Brisk is going to be resuming his seat on the Council of Stellar Management, but one assumes that's an option.
Okay,
maybe we should back up from the beginning for those who are joining. In fact, last week, CCP Helmar was at a conference and said that approximately 10,000 new players a week come to EVE Online. Most of them don't stay, sadly. And some of them are probably current players just making secret new accounts. But if in the off chance that you're one of those 10,000 new players this week, let's tell you what happened. We have a Council of Stellar Management elected once a year that helps us as a liaison group to CCP Games on future decisions with the game. That council included a talented American politician in real life who named Brisk Rubal in game, who was removed on April 8th on suspicion of some sort of disclosure of NDA material, non-disclosure material, that resulted in other people perhaps making economic transactions in the game with beneficial insider information, privileged information. Then a week later, on April 17th, an interim statement was released telling people that they were initiating a more substantial investigation after having spoken perhaps to the people involved, and and would let us know what they found after completing this investigation. And then now on April 25th, just a few minutes ago, they released their final statement on the subject with another dev article and a link to a place on the forums where you can ask questions and discuss this. Talking Station snapped into action.
like Scooby-Doo. Yeah, so the implications of this are that not only did you have a strange parallel to what's going on in real life with Trump and his investigation, because Brisk is an American, I guess he works in and around politics. So there was that link. So it's very interesting in that way. But the other interesting thing, and probably the important thing of this, is that the two people that were banned for 1 year were FCs, fleet commanders, for one of the great alliances in EVE Online, the Initiative. And without them, that kind of took some of the engine out of that alliance, which really had ramifications for groups like Snuff and the Imperium, but mostly Snuff, because if Snuff needed some help, that's who they would rely on. So it's really interesting to see that balance of power not get disrupted or get reversed. Because initially, when this all happened, people were like, "Whoa, Initiative is wounded. Let's go attack them." And so I think the attack rates in Fountain, their home region, actually went up, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it did. There are some. Well, we here at Talking Stations don't tend to get overly riled up about issues or lose our cool, and we don't tend to get too involved in the metagame if we can help it. But there are some theories that said this particular set of events might have been somewhat related to the metagame. Perhaps CCP might have stepped into it inadvertently to some degree. But I think they're being really careful at this point.
Yeah, that wasn't our speculation, but that was something that's out there. And this happens when mysterious things happen, or there isn't a clear-cut narrative, is that people will look into things, and sometimes look into things really deeply. Whether it's true or not, we'll never know. But some of the stuff that people were saying out there, and by some people, I mean like the Meta Show, like the Meta Show, meaning the Imperium, basically, or the people from Imperium, some people from Snuff, I think even the leader of Initiative himself, Sister Bliss. I think there was this view that somebody had sabotaged Brisk, and in doing so had sabotaged their FCs, which had really wounded Initiative, and it was unfair and premeditated. And there was some talk, not necessarily from these guys particularly, but other people, that the attacks on Initiative space had actually ramped up before this happened, and this was just a coup de grace. So there was all kinds of things about how deep the gameplay goes. And the reason that even gets listened to some degree is because in EVE Online, players are capable of planning very, very detailed takedowns. And so that was something that, was suspected and stuff. But it looks like just CCP is in a different place than they were before. I think their AI has changed, internal affairs, sorry.
IA.
Yeah, IA, not AI. Well, maybe they're all robots. This whole time, CCP have been robots. And that would make total sense.
I blame Sancha Kuvakai. But yes, for those of you listening to the podcast, we are responding to some of the chatter that we see in the Talking Stations live stream chatter right now. So That's why we brought up the metagame allegations.
Right.
We have a robust Discord community where people get together to talk about these things, and you might enjoy it if you haven't joined it yet.
And it's again, these are things that we're responding to. We're not necessarily endorsing any of these things, but those are the stuff that's out there. So what it is, though, what the fact is that Brisk Rubal has been, the accusations, I guess, were reversed. The punishments are being reversed, and everything, goes back to normal now? We don't know. You said earlier, Carnero said, it doesn't say that Brisk is on the CSM, but I think that's a safe presumption. If he's not guilty of anything, why would he be removed?
I'm getting reports that on the initiative Discord, he made a public statement saying that he has resigned from the CSM. He can run again if he wants to, but at this point, he has officially resigned. We'll see if a more public statement comes out.
Okay, so he's resigned from the CSM.
CSM.
From this CSM. He has resigned from this CSM. Now, Brisk is in Discord here, but I think he's going to save himself for a different program and probably make another statement there or something like that. I don't know. But we won't get him on here to figure out what's going on in his mind. I imagine he's lost faith in CSM because of this incident, clearly. It would be hard for him to go back. But also the session is over, right? And really the summits are over and really there's nothing else to be done. So there really isn't much going on as far as CSM are concerned, except maybe campaigning for the next year.
The term is sufficiently close to the end that I imagine CCP won't even reach out to fill his remaining term on his seat. They'll just work with what they have. That's just an assumption on my part, but
Dirk McGurk is putting up a bunch of stuff in public. Oh, that's hilarious.
He adds a lot of flavor.
You know, I got to say, though, the parallels to real life are really funny. I find them very, very funny. And real life is, for me, not very funny. It's really sad, actually. But I just like the way that the game parallels real life. And so there's all this talk about like no collusion and release the full report. And now you have total exoneration and everything. Again, I'm not saying they're equivalents, but it is kind of funny that you have a scandal inside of the game as well as a scandal going on outside the game.
I've linked a link to our producer McLeod. I don't know if it's appropriate to put up on the stream.
Sure.
But okay, it's a public tweet from Brisk Rubal. But it's not actually from his Brisk Rubal character. It's from his real-life persona, hence the pause. But apparently he has reaffirmed more publicly that he's chosen to resign from the CSM. There's not much time left in the term, and I need a break after all this. Maybe in the future I'll consider running again, but this has been tough for me and the family, and I could use the time off. And he also tagged it for hashtag TweetFleet if you follow the TweetFleet on Twitter. TweetFleet is sort of the largest Eve chatter community on Twitter. It's been going for years and years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would expect there will be some press coverage from a couple places later today. Probably not as fast as the press coverage was initially on April 8th, because I do believe, regardless of whether you think CCP wandered into the metagame, I do believe that metagame professionals took advantage of that and quickly reached out to some of the journalists, and that story hit quickly, not just from organic spreading, but from encouragement from EVE players. So I don't think that will be present this time as well, but I do think there will be press coverage.
Right. There's a few things that we still need to clear up. Like what happened. I don't know that we'll get the full answer from CCP, at least about the way they were given information that something was going on and how they investigated it. But what was it that was sold?
Oh, I have no idea. But I do, they haven't thrown anyone under the bus. And I think that's appropriate to not throw anyone under the bus. That's my opinion.
Well, I just got word that it was the Moloch. So our theory was that the Moloch, very expensive faction, Titan, was sold, and that triggered an investigation.
What internal, because we all knew that the fax nerf was coming, and that's the main game change affecting Molochs, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So explain that
for those of you. Yeah, let me explain that for a moment. Right now, in a massive fleet battle involving super capitals, Titans are king, and they're king for one reason only. For a couple reasons. One is they've got doomsdays that fire in all forms of tie-dye and are effective and do a lot of damage. And two, they have a substantial tank that allows them to survive for multiple hits. The side with the most effective doomsdaying is probably going to win on these really big battles in today's current large fleet meta. Faction Titans have a more substantial tank than regular Titans. They also add a lot of morale power to it. If you have an unlimited number of faxes, the number of doomsdays that it takes to kill Alpha Strike, kill a faction Titan compared to a normal Titan is a big advantage. Now that reps have been nerfed, you can only apply X number of faxes anyway. So the Titans that used to have an advantage with their tank no longer do. They're just as killable as any other Titan. They have no advantage on their doomsdays. So now they just look expensive, blingy, fancy, and don't actually contribute to a large fleet meta at all. They're just big loss mails. They're going to get primaried first. So that should have resulted in a drop in value of the faction Titan market. I haven't seen that drop happen yet because too many people just want to collect them for personal reasons anyway, but not for massive fleet battles like this. Anyway, so some people might have sold it thinking, might be in the mood to sell their faction Titan thinking it's no longer good for great battles. I'm always going to bring my regular Titan anyway.
Yeah, they're mostly trophies. And I like what you said, loss mails, big loss mails.
A great lost mail is a great thing, and you get to enjoy it for years afterwards. But it's not what people are looking for. People are looking for being effective and meaningful in a large battle and having fun and other things.
Yeah. Okay, well, for me, the bigger picture is CCP's going forward. Is this just a mistake that they can overcome, or will they have to change some kind of policy in the future?
Well, running a game like EVE Online involves changing your policies over and over again as the years go by. We're 16 years into the live game now. This is, their change is a constant. It will be. The games that have been in this business longer are changing every year also. Apologies were included in this communication. They are heartfelt. I don't know what else they can do that would be professional and appropriate. They have stated that some reparations are in process, but they have to sort of figure out what those would be first before they can execute.
Probably skill points for time lost, which wouldn't be very much, and not for these guys anyway. Of course, the stuff that was confiscated would be given back. They were given an apology. There's not really much more that CCP could do. I'm just wondering, in the games do change as staff changes and practices change and all that sort of thing. But I wonder now, looking at some of the previous bans from people who aren't as space famous, if they'll get treated the same way with because it used to be you get banned, you don't hear from CCP after that, and a lot of people would literally say, I can't fight this. I will be writing them for weeks, and so they just basically go away eventually. So I wonder if there'll be an appeals process in the future. Probably not. I don't think they have the capacity to accept appeals from everybody that's been banned, because there's a lot of guilty people in there. They're going to appeal anyway. All right. So I don't know if there's much more to say on this.
I don't either. My assumption is, well, I want to say a couple words about the initiative and fleet commander.
Okay.
The two gentlemen who endured a ban alongside Brisk Rubal were both high-ranking, active fleet commanders for the initiative. And in fact, they were possibly the highest ranking, most active two fleet commanders on the team. I don't fly with the initiative, but I fly alongside them frequently. They're some of my closest neighbors. And I just want to tip my hat to the rest of the FCs who stepped up and did a fantastic job covering during this, and hopefully the two guys will get back in the saddle pretty quickly.
Well, I believe there's going to be some kind of a Rome for initiative, and probably open to public. I don't know. It's something to be a little celebratory. I think the sad part of this was listening to these guys talk about how it had kind of affected them in different ways, clearly. But it was not something that was take it or leave it. I mean, these guys are dedicated players. You don't do what they do without being a dedicated player. And I think it was especially sad for some of the FCs that weren't able to do what they really love to do, which is take a fleet out, be there for their team, and that sort of stuff. That's got to be a big deal. On the other hand, Brisk puts a lot of work into the community, and he's put a lot of energy into trying to help people in the game, whether they bite back or not. In the wormhole case, wormholers were biting him back for trying to represent them because they didn't think he was doing a good enough job, et cetera, et cetera. But he was still putting in a lot of hours, and I think he did something that was very important that I think is really, really important to EVE for a certain class of players, and that is, how much do you integrate EVE Online into your real life? Do you tell your friends that you play it? Do you talk about it with other people? Do you wear a t-shirt? Actually, I just saw a guy on a bicycle riding, and he had Starship Citizen or Star Citizen, and I was like,
yeah.
I was going to wave to him or something, but how much do you display that you play EVE Online? Do you put it on your LinkedIn profile? Is it something that you're actually proud of in real life, or is it just a video game? And that's something I think is in the air for a lot of players, because frankly, the stuff that happens in EVE Online is very transferable to real life skills. You're managing people, you're running logistics, you're planning budgets. There's a lot of things to be proud of in that you're an EVE player, not just a video game player. I think they're different.
I got a job once from someone that I talked to at EVE Fan Fest in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Yeah, but you work in video games.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's part of the fun.
But I'm sure you could say, like, hey, I organize, I have a team of 25 people and we do stuff every week and we organize it and we have to budget it out. We plan things. Or, if you work for an organization like TIS or INN or NER or whoever, you can say, like, there's a lot of actual work that goes into this. That's why, because we take it seriously, and it's a virtual world, so anything can happen. It's not about stats. It's about behavior and chasing down stories. So, yeah, I think marrying EVE Online to your real life is not out of the question for a lot of people. And so this whole thing brought that to the forefront. Is it a wise thing to do? And if you do it, can it bite you back? And in this case, it did, and unfairly so. So, yeah, so now it's a kind of a cautionary tale, which is really too bad.
That's part of the reason I'm watching to see what the press do today with this information. Are they going to put language into their articles to help restore some of Brisk's personal reputation? For example, I also want to bring up the angle of the families of those involved. If you play Eve and your family does not, your family may still be watching what you're doing in the game and participating vicariously, watching how people treat you, how you interact with others. If someone uh, uh, rips you off in game, they may be angry on your behalf, even though they don't play. If they see you mistreated in the press or unappreciated for your contributions to the Council of Stellar Management, and they know how hard you work on it, they may be upset and disappointed. So, there's that angle. Now, they're back in the game at this point. They're free to play and participate, but there may be some lingering disappointment still for their family members.
Yeah, and I have to, I share with my son some of the stuff I do, and he's only 11, but he's like, "You're a streamer? That's amazing!" Because his friends are, look up to streamers. They don't know it's a different kind of streamer, but he says, "Yeah." So it is,
Is it a different kind of streamer, though?
I don't know. I feel different. I look different. But it would be, I think it would be kind of sad to disappoint him and say, I got kicked out of the game, so I can't really stream about it anymore. I think he would take that pretty bad, So I don't know how many other people have kids that look up to them because they play the game and do it well, or they make achievements in the game, that sort of thing. But it's something. The neat thing is I get to relate to him, so he doesn't dismiss me as just a parent, because when they talk about streaming, all his friends want to talk to me about it, so I get included, which is a good thing.
Nice.
It's kind of like this is a bad comparison because I don't really have any talent, but it's like those guys that are musicians and then they do like a children's album so that they can relate to their, so give their kids something while they're young. That's
nonsense. You're the coolest dad in LA.
No, that's the power of streaming. But yeah, so anyway, that is real life stuff, and it kind of sucks. It's too bad. I'm sure CCP is super disappointed in themselves as well for this hiccup. I don't know what systematic changes they will make, if any. I just think it was a big mistake, and a lot of people seem to know it, right? Like as soon as it happened, Brisk was like, "Shrug, I don't know what they're talking about." And then the people that got implicated with him, Pando and Shines, just made it like really, really mysterious, because if it was true, it was a huge screw up on their part. If it wasn't true, it was a huge screw up on CCP's part. So it had a lot of tension over the last 2 weeks.
Well, Mauro, you say that it's a hiccup, but it's not. This isn't the first time. This happens consistently. That's why none of us were surprised when, Brisk and the other two are banned. A bunch of us just turned around and went, well, that's probably wrong. Have they actually checked it?
So that's Bard Ghost. We have an open and public stream. If you want to join us, you can come in and we can have us take some questions, have a discussion about it. So that is Talking in Station's Discord, and the streaming channel should be open for you to come into. If you want to just listen in and lurk, you could do that as well. That's where we're at, and broadcasting from there. And so, yeah, now we'll open it up to the audience for a good 15 minutes or so.
Speaking of which, Ashtarathi's here too. Hi.
Oh, Ashtarathi. All right. Okay, so the first point that Bard Ghost just made was that this is a screw up that has happened multiple times. You want to cite other times it happened?
Ironbank. There were a couple years ago that I cannot recollect the names of, but this isn't the first time, to put it lightly. And then you have stuff like Stunt that happened where CCP just lashed out.
That was a very special circumstance, and it technically didn't get reversed.
It was a special circumstance, But, you go back, you look, and it kind of explains why a lot of people just really didn't believe this when it first happened.
True.
Also regarding why people didn't believe was, when you think about what Brisk has been doing in the CSM, how he's been, putting his public image on the line, etc., etc., etc. If this was true, it would have been so out of character and so left field. It was like even conspiracy theorists wouldn't have even thought this possible. So it was just that initial. Could he have done something like this? I don't think so. Like he's massively on the CSM. He's massively player focused. He's put a lot of personal reputation on the line for this CSM campaign to bolster, etc. And he's going to throw all of that away just to gain a little bit of extra ISK. Hold X for doubt sort of situation.
See,
people don't think they're going to get caught when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. They wouldn't do that if they did. So you never know. Some people like that feeling of high risk. I'm not necessarily saying Brisk does or anybody that associated with this incident does, but people like high risk stuff, even if they're high profile players. It wouldn't have surprised me, but I don't even think that's why people thought it could be true. I think Brisk is very outward facing when he talks. He talks about the CSM in very open ways. I think he very much wants to be a conduit between players and CSM because he likes this game and he wants to improve it. And to do that, you expose yourself in a way that's very dangerous. And so I think a lot of people said, we wouldn't have thought it was nefarious, but he could have accidentally done it. I think there was a lot of that kind of scenario building because you had an immovable, what is it? Batman and Superman, immovable object and an irresistible force colliding. Unstoppable force. Yeah. So you have two things that are sure in conflict with one another. And so in this case, CCP was wrong. And they've now apologized for that. And, but I think the way that people kind of mentally pictured it was that neither one is wrong. CCP did what they had to do, and Brisk accidentally did something. He didn't do it on purpose. But I would never, for any character, any player in EVE, put them in a category where they would never do something nefarious. Even somebody that was as well trusted as Darkness, who was trading these super capital ships, eventually turned around and stole money from one of his clients. You have another financier who's very good at the game, who recently left, and he did a bunch of stuff. We're talking RMT, and we're talking he had a whole bank and a whole portfolio of people, and this is in the last few months. And when he took off from the game, he collapsed it all, turned it into real money, and took off. So you wouldn't have thought that with someone like that, because he trades in trust. So it happens.
What I'm hearing is that you're suggesting that Crib is just playing the super long game.
Crib, I think, he's somebody who's been trusted a long time, but he was more than that. He's somebody that actually built stuff for the community, and he was all about the community. And part of his legend was that he had a tattoo, about the game, Veldspar, on his arm or whatever. And so this somebody who's super dedicated to it, and essentially was but I don't know if he still plays, and I don't ever think he ever played in the same ways that political movers play. I think he's tried to stay above politics. But yeah, he hasn't actually done anything to endanger his pure good reputation.
Yeah. It was a joke. He has used his trust for capital, though, for things like his Titan trading program that ended up being abused by other people. But when he did it, it was pretty good. I do have a couple of questions that remain from this whole thing. And I don't know if all of them are going to get answers. The simplest one is the policy changes that came from the first one going to also go through? It's relatively simple, but are they going to make it so that there's no electronic devices in that inside of the meetings? Is that change going to go through with the rest of them? The second question I have is
one at a time. Well, they do have several months to decide that first one.
Sure. Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't expecting anybody to answer any of these right here, right now. The second question that I have is, what initiated all of this? In other words, whose word was powerful and valuable enough to put forth to trigger all of this that caused CCP to take an action that could later be invalidated, right? And the problem is that they specifically said that this came from the CSM. And so even if it's not true, the accusation exists out there that the CSM did that somebody on the CSM did this to another CSM member maliciously. And so it'd be nice to get that cleared out. And again, it doesn't need to be all of the details, but just enough to make sure that that angle of the accusation can't exist, or at least get spoken to. The third thing is, obviously, this is an extensive failure on their internal services department. Like I said originally, the decision to ban a person, not because of their action on the market, not because of the fact that they're held under NDA, but under the accusation that they transmitted information from one place to another, and then have that decision be revoked, implies a certain failure in their process that I would like to be spoken to and fixed.
I want to point out that CCP Arcanon used to run the internal affairs group for some years. I know that you don't mean just the internal affairs part of the process that might need to be fixed. They should bring back CCP Arcanon if they can. I don't know if he's available or what, but I haven't talked to him in a little bit. He was fantastic. Maybe they need a little help there in that area.
What I could see happening is regarding the electronic devices thing, is in meetings that are, heavily going to be under NDA / going to be revealing, very long game plans. I can definitely see that going forward being, just a wise move. But just outright banning them, perhaps not.
By the way, to answer one of your questions, I think it was Panda that posted here in public. I want to say that CCP Dopamine and CCP Grendel, both have been really nice to deal with in the process. He further says, it took CCP a while to talk to us, which was the worst thing about all this. But he does say that Grendel and Dopamine were very, very easy to work with to clear it all up. Pando being one of the people who was banned for a year.
I made I can see I can imagine what's happening. I sort of said in a reply in the forums about, people are screaming about, well, to everyone else who's been banned before, you need to go and review them. And I basically said those reviews should be taking place before the ban ever gets applied, because what you should be able to do is do your investigation, you find them guilty, go back and review them, make sure everything stacks up correctly, then issue the ban, so that whenever someone comes back and challenges you, you can literally go, there's the evidence, this is what we looked at, this is why we banned you, thank you very much, have a good day.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I think what's happened is why when they're saying that it took a long time for them to come back is what I suspect is people have, like Dopamine and that, have gone, oh, actually, did we dot the I's? Did we cross the T's? Did we go back and double check everything? And then once they started going back, this perhaps took the first 24 hours, then they started communicating and started realizing, oops, we may have made a mistake here.
I want to say a couple words about the role of public relations in this too. CCP has PR staff. The role of PR has changed immensely in the last 20 years. Originally in video games, the PR person was the one who spoke to magazine editors and television editors and tried to get them to cover new games as they were launched, to try to get hype and get people to come in and try it. Well, there aren't any magazines anymore, and that whole world has changed and is nothing like what it was. The role of the PR professional now has completely changed also. Now they're there to help you with things like a crisis. They help you polish your messaging. They help you interact with opinion leaders and the fancy streamers that Matterall was alluding to earlier, that he doesn't quite feel like he's a part of yet, even though he is. That's what PR are for. They're supposed to. They should have looked at the wording of the first article on the 8th of April, and they should have gone over that and polished it a little bit as part of the process of releasing it. They would have taken out a couple of inflammatory statements that stirred up the metagame or that people responded to. I think that would have helped CCP in this process.
Here's a thought for people. I wonder if this is coming off all the backlash CCP had over the last, say, 6 months before the ban was issued, about them being too slow to react, about them not giving information to people, about them, not doing things when, it's all public knowledge, etc., etc., etc. And they've just sort of jumped the gate and gone, oh, we need to nip this in the bud before anything happens, and put a public statement out so we make sure we're seen to the players as if we're doing something, and then they haven't done due process, and that's where it sort of bit them in the arse.
The thing is, when people say that, they mean with the bots and everything else, not with something.
But isn't this
kind of effective like this?
Well, no, isn't this basically the same? Because you're basically saying, he is using an out of game advantage to further himself in game massively. So they just sort of jumped on it as a, here's the flagpole. We can wave it around and go, we're doing things.
Sure. Yeah. The thing is, there's a difference between being able to see that someone is botting in game and having circumstantial evidence that someone has used an NDA leak to profit on the market. Correct. One of those you can tell in minutes.
All right, Ashtaroth. I'll let you finish Bard Ghost, and then
No, I was finished. It's fine.
All right, Ashtarothi, what did we answer your question? Not answer your questions, but did you get both questions asked, and did you hear anything enlightening?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't think that we are going to generate answers to those questions, but it does confirm to me that there's a lot of thoughts on the matter. The one thing I do want to point out is that CCP, like, there's this weird assumption that CCP doesn't do like follow-ups, or you can't, what is it called? Like have a ban reviewed. And while I can't think of any good examples off the top of my head, it has certainly happened before, right? Like I've heard of botters accused botters getting their accounts back, accused, all sorts of different accusations can be reviewed and looked at. That's what the ticket system is for. It's just a lot of people don't get the results that they want. So this assumption that it just doesn't happen at all, I don't think is true.
All right, a couple of things. We have Elise Randolph that just joined us. How's it going, Elise?
Oh, pretty good. It's huge news. I'm like, I know a lot of people weren't surprised, but I'm pretty surprised at just how far of a walk back they took.
I am too. It feels, I got to say, it. I don't know how to say it nicely, but it feels like I don't know. It feels pretty bad to see CCP not be a little steadier than it should be, I guess.
What I wanted to speak to Bard Ghost's point, though, which is
after that we're going to go to Darian here, who has a question. But go ahead, Dash.
Okay, that's fine. So the problem is that on a high level, just the statement that a CSM member is leaking non-disclosure information and it is being used to profit and advance a specific organization within the game is a significantly more important and impactful and serious allocation than somebody who's botting. And therefore, if evidence points towards that direction, I can definitely understand why they would pull the trigger and then sort it first. Because that's the kind of accusation that if it is true, the damage is systemic, will be ongoing, and letting the person know that there's a problem can actually make the problem significantly worse.
All right, let me move over to Darian. How you doing, Darian?
Good evening.
Long-time listener, first-time caller kind of thing?
Exactly. I'm not a one-time listener, to be honest. I've been following you for quite some time, but I have actually, I've actually never had the chance to step into that. Well, there is no question here. Good evening, Carneros. There is no question here to be made. I'm just a bit of, I have a bit of a curiosity here because you all seem to be pretty amazed on how the whole situation of this. This is pretty straight up, and like I said, I'm amazed that you cannot figure out how things may have ended up in this. The whole CSM thingy and how this works, and I have nothing against the CSM or CCP, lacks a lot of transparency to the rest of the community. So to be honest, no one really knows what happens when the doors close or what happens behind barred doors. And the lack of communication and transparency through the players and the CSM is what could actually end up to what happened to Brisk, which this could actually be a win-win, like I written, for both CCP and Brisk if handled correctly, because CCP boldly came out and said, "Oh, we're mistaken. We'll take back everything," and Brisk was the victim can become the hunter now, and it's all win-win.
That's not a win-win, is it? If what do you mean, the
Isn't
hunter?
it? Well, no,
It doesn't seem like one.
I don't think so. That's not
yeah,
a win.
well, not the hunter actually, but it may have caused some damage to his profile throughout the game. But I think if played correctly, he can actually come back.
Yeah, he can come back in the game. I'm worried about his real life reputation, though.
The fact that he's been exonerated, if he can get like the major publications like PC Gamer articles and that sort of stuff to sort of either retract the articles or amend them with CCP bans player but then finds him innocent, something like that, so that when it comes into the search engine, the first things you see is he's innocent. Yeah, I think it would be good for him because he can literally say, yeah, they investigated me and they found I was completely innocent. So it could be beneficial for him in that way. But that's if you can get all your ducks in the row. Yeah, as Nara said, that's a huge if. Because PC Gamer can literally go, it's not going to make a headlines, can't you bother then? So they leave the old articles up, and then that's where you have the problems of conflicting information, and then you have the damage to your reputation.
I don't really believe that there is any reputation come from any side that can actually end up badly. I mean, there is no bad publicity. There is only publicity. I mean,
no.
His entire job is trust.
Yeah, right. So this guy's job is political.
Let's avoid that for now. But yes. Finish up your point. I want to throw it to Elise. I love hearing from him.
Sorry. So it's breaking an NDA is basically saying in his situation is I don't care about my job. So that's why everyone was so. Whoa, hang on. Are we sure about this? Double check everything. Go back and make sure, because Brisk has put a lot of personal stakes on the line. We know by saying yes, I'm a senator, I'm a congressman, I'm a lobbyist. So this is my livelihood. This is what I do as a job. I sign NDAs, I make discussions, I lobby for people, etc., etc., etc. I am privy to privileged information, and then CCP basically turns around and goes, well, he doesn't abide by what he signs, and so that's why everyone was like very up in arms about it.
I think there's something to be said about I can't remember who it was, but someone just a couple of minutes ago, and it kind of got my brain turning. Like acting quickly, there's and stuff like that when it comes to banning. One of the things that kind of seemed very slow and methodical was quite a long time ago, Alliance Tournament 11, and of course I'm going to have an Alliance Tournament spin to everything, so apologies for that. But Alliance Tournament 11, we had some pretty good idea that two teams were colluding and cheating, and you can make those accusations all you want, and you just look like a sore loser. But we had someone coming in and telling us as it was happening, like, yo, this is not above board. So I know a few people filed petitions, and nothing really acted on it until quite some time later. Everything was taken care of. The punishing teams were like banned for a year. the punishing players were removed from the game, and all the ISK was reversed and stuff like that. But at the same time, you had it such that an entire Alliance tournament has an asterisk on it now, because these two teams were cheating the whole time and kind of knew halfway through that it was happening, but it took so long for it to go out. And so I think you can always make that case like, hey, maybe it is worthwhile to act when you are like 80% confident or whatever. There's like, I'm sure there's some threshold. I'm not saying it was good to do, but I'm just saying that could have been some sort of a motivating factor, like just we're pretty sure about this, so let's get it out of the way before there's any huge damage that can be done to this massive institution, which has gone like now a record amount of time without someone getting thrown off. So I mean, that's something to be said, but I don't know. It just sucks for Brisk really bad, and I guess Pando and Shines too. Like they just took it real hard on the chin, and so I would hate to be in that position.
I think there were a few things. There were a few things that I think could have, and I totally agree with Carneros in that a PR person might have been able to iron out some of this stuff before it went public if they used a PR person, or maybe it was just a blind spot. But you're hitting an alliance that's going to create a lot of player talk about this sort of thing. You're also hitting CSM. You're also hitting a CSM member that's popular for a bit of a caricature of being a politician. So I had all the ingredients of this is something big. It's going to get a lot of talk, at least in our circles. And it's going to reverberate. Our circles reverberate into real news as well. And I just think there's a couple things they could have avoided. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that first post was just mondo questionable. And then that led to basically everything, right? Like, we were talking about it before, comparing this post to like other posts, and it's kind of it was a bit of an anomaly. But just to show how serious I guess CCP took this whole thing, is we got this information out today, the whole reversal thing, and today is it's a holiday in Iceland. So CCP is not working today, so they're just like throwing this out as quickly as they can so it doesn't get buried on like the Friday news or anything like that.
Yeah. So I think that first statement, by giving too much information, I think they could have made separate blogs or whatever. And you could have just said, look, there's been a breach of CSM and Brisk has been removed, and leave it there. And then, handled it more of a CCP versus contractual obligations with people. And then, I don't know. I just think it could have been a lot less politically explosive in the game, which gives it even more fire to become something interesting inside of the game and outside of the game as well.
Do you think there's anything that can be done to avoid something like this happening in the future? Because obviously, if someone does something bad, we want them punished. But if someone does something that's not bad, we obviously don't want them punished. So, what can you do as an institution to make sure this doesn't happen?
That's not
processes.
Jump the gun, and then not close tickets with a you're banned, because that's happening as well. People can't petition their bans because their petitions are just getting insta closed by GMs and some CCP dev.
And this is what I stated in my reply is when they're going through these sort of situations where they're going to ban someone, is you do your initial investigation, you find them guilty, you go back again, you cross your I's, you dot your I's, you cross your T's, you double check everything, and if everything comes up saying guilty, ban them. And then if the petition comes in, you literally go, here's our evidence, this was our process, this is why you were banned, thank you, and that's it. You've got the due diligence there of this is the proof, this is why we banned you.
But I mean, we sort of had that a little bit, right? Because when Brisk mentioned, when Brisk heard that, I think it was Pando or Shines was the other one that was banned, he goes, "Oh, I think I know what this is from." So he had like some sort of inclination.
Okay, yeah, so he had an inclination, but it wasn't.
Yeah, but he had already, I don't think it was a secret. He had already admitted that he had talked to Pando during the CSM, and he got in trouble for it. But he got in trouble by the CSM, not by CCP. CCP, I guess, wasn't aware. And so that might have been because when Pando got, when Pando was the guy that got banned for a year, that's when he said, oh, that kind of makes sense now, because then it relates back to that moment where he got in trouble the first time. So, but again, that wasn't necessarily an NDA break. That was more sharing conversations that were going on in CSM with someone outside of CSM. So I don't know if that's an NDA break, but it certainly was something that the CSM got mad at him about. And so I think that's why it started to make more sense.
So
go ahead, Ash.
I was going to say that given any system of detection, automated or non, there's going to either be, you're not going to have a perfect rate of detection. So you're either going to side on the side of false positives or false negatives. And this is why the comparison between a video game and a court of law breaks down. Because in a court of law, you absolutely want to do everything you possibly can to ensure that there are no false positives. In other words, you don't punish somebody who doesn't deserve to be punished. And in fact, our legal system is designed to totally allow for false negatives, that somebody who's totally guilty can be found not guilty, because our system is designed to, above all else, try to not punish the innocent. Now, there's plenty of comments about how that system works or doesn't work, but in a video game, your priority is very, very different, because you have a much smaller population. People's ability to impact the system is far greater, and therefore the temptation and also the ability to undo the damage of a false positive is significantly easier, right? Like if you arrest somebody and put somebody in jail for a few years, that's a bigger deal than banning an account that then gets petitioned and then gets put back in place or something like that. So in a game like Eve, you're definitely going to want to err on the side of false negatives, because that's easier to clean up. Therefore, as Elise was saying, and as it has been said before, even the threat that it's true does demand a lot of action. Also, as said in the chat, however, it's all about how it's communicated. Had they have just said, we have reason to believe this, we have evidence to believe this, this is the actions that we're taking, pending further investigation, then I think that a lot of this could have been avoided, and we could even be forgiving of CCP for having made the mistake.
Yeah, had the original thing been he's been suspended pending investigation, fine. That would have been so much easier for people to take.
Some common sense could have actually worked way better here if it was put in good use to that. I mean, common sense was not used here, I think, by CCP. I will agree that it was blatant out of CCP to actually go out and proclaim someone guilty, for something so harsh before actually he produced proof of that. So I think it doesn't have to do anything with any law systems or anything. I mean, this may sound heretic or something. It's a video game. I mean, let's not burn down anything due to that. So I think CCP should have taken a deeper breath and taken a step back, seen and studied all the evidence and everything it had, relate everything to common sense on how that could have happened. And actually,
hey, Darian, time out, break for a second. 2 minutes ago, PC Gamer posted a response article about, and the title they chose this time is "The Real Life Lobbyist Who Was Banned from EVE Online for Corruption, Proven Innocent." And then the next line says, "After an investigation, EVE Online's developers have issued an apology and rescinded the ban." Can you put? Oh yeah, you've got it up on stream for us. Thank you, McLeod.
Thanks.
And we should say that PC Gamer Mesner, actually the writer there, was criticized somewhat heavily for a heavy-handed headline, which is not unusual for him. But he mentioned Brisk's real name, some 16 times, and people thought that was a bit far. Since CCP didn't mention his real name, why should PC Gamer? But since he's a public figure, I guess in real life it was fair game. So it's a big deal that PC Gamer writes a retraction here, and not just a little note on the original story, but they actually put out another article. So good for them.
Nice.
And they've updated the original article as well, so that's good.
Yeah,
Good catch. You guys
a
are fast.
thing. That's a huge plus for them. But yeah, I think I was one of the people that thought the original PC Gamer article was like a little bit too heavy-handed. Like it's, as someone who's been on the CSM, and when I was on the CSM, you had to expose your public identity. Like those had to be linked. And I know a few people.
Why is that? Why would the company want your real name out there, by the way?
I think they wanted it just to show that there weren't like a whole bunch of alts running for the CSM just for public people, and also because they took the CSM seriously. They said, okay, well, it's not your in-game character that's signing an NDA; it's your actual human like personality, that's identity, that's signing this NDA. We're not getting this character to work with us; we're getting the person behind the character. So we just see it's right to put everyone's name out there.
In the earlier days of CCP, like especially that period of time, they had a lot of difficulty creating bonds to real life. And this manifested in two ways: the way that the CSM was managed and the way that third-party applications were managed, right? Like I remember there was this period of time as we were moving into Crest that they tried to make it so that in order to make an app for them, you had to like pay them $10 or something like that to get into a contract with them. And that ended up falling apart because nobody liked it and everybody thought it was dumb. But the problem is that they wanted that money transaction as a way of like creating a legal bond between the third-party developers and CCP. So, and this all kind of came out of the same era. So it seems to me like CCP struggled with kind of creating that secondary tier of bonding with the player base that want to step up and be more than just a player, if that makes sense. I don't know if they've ever solved it. I think we just kind of ignored it and moved on. But yeah.
Well, I'm just glad that they kind of reversed, or they not reversed, but they iterated on the CSM idea where you don't have to tie your real life name to it. I mean, for me, I already like put out my real life name, so I didn't really care. But there are some people that like really wanted to remain private, and some Eve. I know we're saying like, oh, Eve's this video game, blah blah blah. Who cares? It's just a video game. But it's more than a video game. Like we're talking about hobbies that people put 30, 40 hours a week into for decades. Like that's a little bit more. That's not like just playing Pac-Man or some shit, right? That's a little bit more serious. And I know I've had people when I was with PL fighting Brave Newbies, I had someone from the Hero Coalition find my mom and call her and leave her a message saying that her son was a sociopath. I've had people call my work, and I know the Metania's had people like threaten his actual dog, which no matter what you think about a person's in-game persona, that's like so far gone. So I'm really glad that all that binding of a real life name is gone.
Well, it has trappings of real celebrity, right? I mean, they must deal with this all the time, but we're not equipped to deal with it as well. But also, I think I think Aerith is famously known for not wanting to even show his face in pictures. He certainly didn't want to associate himself with the game because of this sort of thing, or it could leak into the news. I think Brisk is a little bit special in that he is a politician, and it's the times we live in right now where politicians and corruption are a big deal. But I think it's risky for anybody to attach their name, and that I think, but it also has benefits, doesn't it? Like to like be open about, this is weird. It's almost like a fight club. You don't really talk about it.
I think when you have, sorry, I'll just be real quick. I think when you have the option to do it, but without the necessity to do it, like, or without the requirement to do it, I think it's good, because then you can choose like, hey, I want to do this. I'm aware of what repercussions might be, but I feel confident, and that's what Brisk did. So that was like a big, that like he made that choice, so it's good.
Well, people shouldn't even have to live in fear of shit like this happening. You know, like you say, at least the stuff leveled at you, the stuff leveled at Matani, this with Brisk.
Well, that's nefarious.
It shouldn't even have to be a thing. You shouldn't have to worry about your game name.
But you should be
real life name.
But you should be accountable for your actions in a game that show your character outside the game, or is that too far?
Accountability, though, is it? This is just people lashing out and attacking people.
No, let's say you're a bot or RMTer and you ripped off a bunch of people in the game. Should that follow you outside of the game? Is that fair or not?
If you've linked yourself, so fucking be it.
Okay, so then you're saying it is fair for your real life, for your EVE online virtual world behavior to be counted against your character in real life.
I know where you're going.
If you've consented to that, yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, at the same time, my point is more you shouldn't have to live in fear of people abusing your public information. If you do something that really is wrong, fine, then people are going to call you out on it. But for people to lash out and go after your real life because they can't kill you in a video game, that's wrong.
That's a more fundamental problem. That's not an EVE problem. That's a whole internet and internet gaming problem, because everything has that.
Yes, I know it is. I'm not exclusively applying it to EVE. That was just a general, people shouldn't have to live in that fear. Like, well, I know people already are cancelling CSM campaigns because they know their names are public and they don't want shit like this happening to them.
There's one person that's doing it, and he suffered repercussions for helping CCP in E-Vegas, right? We're talking about, and I only talk about stuff that's public, but we're talking about Commander A's.
A's has cancelled his, but there have also been a few others that are heavily considering it.
At least would this give you pause to run for CSM?
Not really. I mean, I could, if I were Brisk, I would not want to be on the CSM again, right? Because it just has like this really bad taste in your mouth. But if I was someone else and I'm like, okay, well, they were heavy-handed, I would want to know, like, going in the future that they wouldn't be as heavy-handed, or I'd want some sort of, I don't know, some sort of institution in place. So like, or like, not institution, but some sort of like rule set in place where like, yo, if I get caught being dumb or cheating, I want you to just freeze my account for a month and do this huge internal investigation or something like that. So I don't have to like go through that. But as like a normal person, I'd still be fine running for the CSM.
Would you think it would be fair if CCP sort of said that the process going forward would be a case of, if this happened again, is they would conduct an investigation in private? So, you know, they would do the ban that they thought was right. Then they, in private, would communicate with the players, you are banned because of XYZ reason. This is the key thing, is they would tell the players why they were banned, present the evidence, give them the ability to petition it, and if the petition falls through and they are found guilty, then it goes to the public with, we are removing Brisk from the CSM because of, and then listing, you know, because of breaking NDA or whatever. But it's a case of giving the players, giving that period of time between, you know, CCP jumping the gun and going out there and giving it straight to the public, and giving people the ability to petition against the ban because, you know, they think they're innocent and they believe they haven't done anything wrong, and then CCP being able to do a full investigation behind it.
I think we can just solve this by just amending the CSM white paper and be like, hey, if we think you're doing something bad, here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw your accounts in purgatory for a month we're going to make an announcement saying we've done that, and then we're going to investigate it fully. And if we find you guilty, then we're going to make a statement saying so. But if we don't, then we're going to make a statement saying that too. Like, I think you just throw that little thing in there in the white paper, and that just solves all of this potential like bad people not wanting to run for the CSM and something like that. Just easy, one paragraph, just shove it in there. You can just scribble it down on like a a Post-it note and shove it on the back.
So, Carneros, let's bring this back into Eve. Is this going to start? Is this going to start a war? Is this going to start in-game conflict? Are there resentments?
I don't think so. I do think that there'll probably be some kind of roam, probably on a Friday night, to type of thing. If you go on it, I recommend fitting a festival launcher in one high slot type thing. But but I don't see this affecting an initiative deployment, for example, or an Imperium anything.
I'm sure the initiative guys are super excited, and now they want to do like a different type of deployment because, like, we got our boys back, right? Let's go blow stuff up together.
All I'm going to say is initiative Stuka fleets everywhere for the next 2 weeks.
Actually, I think they're considering something a little more fun than a Stuka fleet. I'm in a back channel with some things, seeing something being organized, and it has a fun flavor to it. We'll see.
All right, so celebrations, but not resentments, not payback, nothing like that.
No, I can just see Pando being like hyped there, being able to play the game again, and suddenly like he's on like the Stuka fleet's been taken out every few days everywhere.
So no payback though. There's no. Are there any villains in this whole thing? Does it have that kind of color to it, or is it just kind of sad?
I think it just depends on what sort of narrative you believe for how this whole thing happened, right? Like, if it was done maliciously, then yeah, of course there's going to be some sort of in-game vengeance. But I personally don't think there was any. I can't believe that there was an in-game sort of like hit put out on these guys that was run through the CSM or something. Because if that was the case, then just get rid of the CSM. Like, if you're capable of doing that on the CSM, then you have to ban all those people and just get rid of it. Like, screw it.
At that point, it's become more of a problem than a solution, right?
But I really don't believe that's the case at all. I don't think
some people thought that though, right? I mean,
it's a common conspiracy theory, right? And the problem is you can't disprove it because CCP is not going to come out and say, "Hey, that's ridiculous." No, they're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's a popular theory because there is all the people from different groups, right? There would be reason to try something like that. We just have to believe that the people on there are above doing that.
Well, all right. So let's do a summary of what happened, and then we'll probably finish up, right, Carneros?
Okay.
It's been an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So just to start, on April 8th, there was a statement posted, and Brisk Rubal was removed from CSM 13, accused of certain things and banned. 2 other people were also banned, but their names were not mentioned. We later discovered they were high-level active FCs for the initiative. Then a week later, on April 17th, an interim statement was released saying that there was an investigation in process and that they would let us know further statement at the end of the investigation. And then approximately 2 hours ago, a final statement was released letting us know that he had been vindicated. And that bans and punishments were in the process of being reversed, somewhat affected by the fact that there's a holiday today in Iceland, and most of that work has to be done in Iceland. That's the recap. And then finally, About 30 minutes ago, PC Gamer released an article on this subject, and I imagine there might be some other articles later today.
Yeah, Massively also did that I completely missed, that they posted about 40 minutes ago. Actually, closer to an hour. I don't know, like 40 minutes ago is when they posted theirs. So it looks like a lot of people are, in the gaming media at least, are posting their retractions, which is good to see.
Yeah, I guess it took a few minutes to write it after the announcement was made. I think that's pretty responsive. That's pretty respectable.
Well, again, they're reacting at the same speed we are. They're probably getting the information at the same time we are through the dev blog.
And then finally, there was a public statement posted by Brisk Rubal saying that he has resigned from the CSM and would consider participating again in the future.
He would or would not? I missed that.
Well, he might consider participating again in the future, but he's not ruling it out, but he needs a break. And this CSM is winding down for its term anyway. Yeah, the Massively OP article says CCP Games withdraws all accusations against CSM member it banned for supposed leaks. And then it has a photograph of cool NPCs. Anyway.
Carneros, in your experience, one last thing here. Does CCP take any kind of a reputation hit among peers in the gaming world?
Peers in the gaming world would look at this. Other game companies would look at this and go, wow, this is just more reason that the EVE game is complex. The EVE community is hardcore. The EVE metagame is hardcore. I don't know how they built that. That stuff is amazing. That's, it would not hurt their CCP reputation, although you're gonna expect that customer service leadership at the other companies are going to look at that and go, interesting. And PR teams are going to look at that and go, oh, I would have done that differently. That will happen, of course. But
right.
No, not in general.
That reminds me of...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, that reminds me of when people were saying, when this first started, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so bad for CCP, or some people saying good news or no news is bad news or whatever. Well, honestly, this whole story really does play into like the overall narrative of EVE. So in a lot of ways, it's just kind of more of the same.
Ashtarothi, do you think that this years from now will be remembered at the same level as something like a T20 incident?
No, I put this in the same realm as like the I Want ISK or any of those kinds of issues. The T20 scandal was above and beyond everything else. Nobody made a forum and banned words because of this.
Yeah.
Also, there was a population that would bring it up over and over again, saying how unfair it was. So.
Right. The T20 incident was an accusation that spoke to the core of of how CCP manages EVE Online. So if that was handled incorrectly, it could have significantly damaged just the overall trust in the EVE Online system altogether. At worst, this situation brings a lack of trust to the CSM, not to all of EVE.
Yeah. All right. Well, look at that. Zenith there is giving away a bunch of subs. Thanks for that kind of a generous thing to strangers. I think it's all in the spirit of celebrating that Brisk, Pando, and Shines are back in initiative. They will be reimbursed for the stuff that was taken and possibly for skill points. Anyway, amends will be made by CCP. CSM has lost Brisk because he resigned, not because he was kicked. And I assume that they will still monitor devices like personal devices like phones and laptops inside inside the CSM sessions in the future. I think it's a safe assumption, right? This was a close call. I actually think it's an ambiguous call, but close call, because there was kind of a break with tradition by talking with people outside the game while you're inside of the CSM summit.
Sorry, Maro. The rule will probably still go ahead because it's a common sense rule anyway that probably should have been a thing earlier.
Yeah. This actually reminds me a lot of, like, in real life politics, they say it's not just about the conflict, it's about the perception of a conflict, right? So the idea that this accusation could be made demonstrated a failure in the system. So even if the accusation wasn't founded or whatever, it is good to take basic measures in order to prevent the perception of impropriety.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is a lingering question there, like, who in the CSM put this in motion? Was it all of them? Was it one of them? That remains to be seen if anybody's looking for it, but we don't know right now. And at this point, I think that CSM is pretty much over. I wonder if Aerith will run again. I don't think this affects him in any way, but I wonder if the perception of this has had him think twice. Plus, he's been on a few times, and who knows, like, if it's something he enjoys or not. Maybe we'll bring him on and ask him.
I also wonder what kind of secondary impacts this is going to have for the CSM's relationship with CCP, because there's going to be a lot of people in CCP that only know about this from kind of the same way that we do, right? Like on a very surface or only through the dev blogs or whatever. And there's already a lot of lack of trust between certain branches of CCP and the CSM. So it's very possible that this is going to be used internally, if not as like an exact example of a problem that can be coming out of CSM, will at least cause people to become more cautious around them.
When I was on the CSM, we had, I think, one or two people kicked off. No, one person kicked off. And I mean, obviously, I was on the CSM like a dinosaur's time ago, so I'm sure things have changed. But they would, CCP, the person running the CSM, would send out an internal memo to the company, and they'd disclose more information than the public got. They're saying, yo, we're kicking this guy because he did exactly this, this, and this. We want you guys to know, blah, blah, blah.
Wow, that's interesting.
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, we're talking about back in the day when there was literally a guy at CCP whose only job was to run the CSM. Like that was it. And he had like another guy working with him. So I don't know if they still do that, but in history, they've done that before. So.
Yeah, I think in recent history, they've doubled up the duty with something else. So does the CSM seem different back then from now?
I don't know. I think the CSM now is better than the CSM then, right? It just seems, at least with the people on the CSM. That's when this news first came out, I was like super gutted, because I know a lot of people on the CSM that have put in so much work to try and elevate the community's perception of the CSM and to restore that bridge between the CSM and CCP. Like they put in so much work to do that, because it was really quite tarnished. For the longest time, the CSM was viewed as either worthless or just some sort of popularity contest, right? Though somehow people always thought that the CSM they were simultaneously a useless institution and always got all that insider information for the biggest alliances. So they somehow had both of those thoughts, even though they're a bit thing. But yeah, I think the CSM now is quite a bit better, or at least they appear to be. The people on the CSM have been putting in quite a lot of work to make that the case.
And if the CSM ever went away, you would notice a change in CCP. You would notice a difference in how the game was run, because there are a certain number of, we'll call them bad ideas, being presented that are getting filtered out and not coming to fruition because the CSM is stopping them. is advising against them, and the ideas being retracted. So if you stop filtering those out, it will, the game will taste differently, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a while where CCP tried to do, I forget what they had called it, but they would just get like a bunch of players in a certain specialty, like focus group. They had like a certain focus group. They had like a capitals focus group, Tech 3 Destroyer focus group, just to get a little bit of feedback. And those were just complete train wreck of the disaster. There was so much noise. Because the players, they could just meme. Like, I remember I was in one of the focus groups and there was just like 20 pages on Slack discussing Russian literature because there's the players were just goofing around. They didn't really care. They were like, I said my piece and the rest I'm just going to goof around and have fun. The CSM, they have this commitment for a year. So they definitely take it really seriously.
It's important to note when it comes to things like focus groups is that not everybody's there as a good faith actor. And even those who are, as Elise pointed out, once their point has been made, then it's like, what more do they do, right? So unfortunately, suppressing other people's opinion is a valid way of getting your opinion across. And therefore, causing more noise to some people is seen as a valid strategy, which is another reason why the CSM is valuable, because it's a small group of people, and it's people that are being held accountable, if by nobody else, by CCP, right? Like, they can decide how much to engage with them. They can decide who is no longer participating. So there is inherent value there. And I think that, as Elise pointed out, it's actually very difficult to see some of that value, right? Like, a lot of people say, oh, the CSM is useless. They do nothing, da-da-da-da. But really, we don't know how bad it would be if we didn't have a CSM, how many things that could have happened that didn't happen in the last year or two, especially as we go through this important business transition for CCP. What could have or would have happened if we hadn't have had at least a CSM sanity test?
Jintan, I just want to inject something really quick. Jintan posted something hilarious from his blog, where he says he actually had to explain how boost ravens work to a bunch of people at CCP. And so that just goes to show you how useful the CSM is, right? So
real quick, we'll do a little bit of news and then a recap, and then we're out. But I want to say that sadly, Minxie is stepping back from leadership of Signal Cartel, and that is a good move for her. But Signal Cartel will continue with the same leadership. She'll be around as a consultant, and I believe the guy taking over is, I should know his name, Thrice. Yes, I think Thrice is taking over as CEO. So change in leadership there. That's been a real miracle story inside of EVE Online. There's other news, right? We have...
there's been a few capital fights here and there.
Where are they mostly happening?
On the front between Test and Fraternity.
Test and Fraternity have had a few, and I think Northern Coalition have had one as well with Unspoken Alliance and Co.
Oh, and Snuff managed to kill a Goon Titan in Delve with suicide dreads. That was kind of a big thing, because nothing that hadn't happened in like almost a year, even more than a year.
Year and a half.
A ratter.
Yeah, it was nearly. I was saying nearly 2 years under the Delve umbrella since the Titan was lost.
Yeah, but that was that's all mecha math, right? So it's not real math. I think it was actually like a year and a little bit.
Did they get permission or something?
I think it's just part of it is part of it's forcing mistake, part of it's maybe a bit of the capital changes. Who knows?
A lot of it has to do with whether the pilot asks for help or not, or I don't know what the story was on that one. He was ratting, so, and you can't really AFK rat in a Titan, so
let's hope not, for God's sakes. Like, has it come to that?
He would have been at his desk. He didn't have really a tank fit. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so there's and then we'll this Sunday we'll probably go to the Winter Coalition versus Legacy Borderlands to see what kind of action's going there. Apparently, Elo Knight has been on a hell of a winning streak against Test and Legacy Coalition. Elo
I'm
now
shocked.
Working. Yeah, JK.
Elo's been doing like unbelievable work. Like, speaking from a Test perspective, like Elo has been doing like it's just insane stuff recently, like 12-hour stints FCing and responding. Like, if we ever try and do something, he'll respond very quickly. He's on his A game. He's a force to be reckoned with.
So we'll talk to him on Sunday with other FCs. And don't forget that tonight we have Talking in Stations, the update coming up with Artemis. That'll be in a few hours. Check that out. And there was some other news, but at this moment I don't recall it, and I didn't write it down. But I did want to talk about Minxie. I want to talk about the war on the borders. And oh yes, next Tuesday, or maybe even sooner, we'll get a video from Crack Mac, who's here, and his real life workmate. And they work on mind control stuff. Crack Mac, if you're still here, can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so, well, actually Turbo can also explain it, but it's like, Turbo.
Oh, he's here too. I didn't see him.
Yeah.
Hi, Turbo. It's nice to meet you. But he might have stepped away.
Yeah, so it's basically, we use it for people with disabilities, right? So we will want to try it, extend it to Eve and see if there is applications to use it inside Eve. So like you can, for instance, if you want to fire missiles or if you want to fire lasers, you can think like, oh, I need to fire them now, and then it will do it.
Just with thought, right?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's so cool.
Yeah, that has immediate benefits to players with disabilities, I think. And so we'll explore that. They'll put a video together for us, and we'll present that and put it out on our YouTube. And actually put a post up on our website to celebrate something like that. And maybe on Tuesday we'll have interviews with these two guys that are working with this technology. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Carneros, one last recap, and then we'll thank people.
Okay. Yeah.
You're gonna have to do the whole
April. All right. April 8th, he was accused of some things and removed from the CSM and banned, along with two buddies. Then today, they finished the investigation and restored him back to play. And they're in the process of restoring all three players back to play, reversing everything that was done. There was a formal apology. There will be potentially some reparations to the guys, depending on what happened and what they lost. And Brisk Rubal has resigned from CSM 13, but does retain the option of running in the future on future CSMs. CSM 13 has been winding down. Some game journalists have already posted articles, including PC Gamer and Massively OP. So that's our quick recap.
Fantastic. I'd like to thank Crack Mac and Turbo for coming around. Sorry we didn't get to the subject matter we wanted to. We had this breaking news. I also want to thank Elise for jumping in, Ashtarothi, and the guys in here from, oh, look, Jintan's in here from TIS. And also thanks for the guys that participated here with us in the public stream channel of Voice. If you want to participate, feel free. It's Talking in Stations Discord. You can find it at talkinginstations.com. There's a link to it. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. This has been wrapping up a chapter that's been big news, which is why we've taken time to do this special coverage. And I'm sure this week will be full of Brisk and others on talk shows as well. So again, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And we will see you next time.